Dan, we're talking data.
Yep, that is kind of like the most important thing I think moving forward. Well, it's always been important, but this year more than ever, when data's skewed in a lot of places and you can get different types of data from different sources.
Yes.
It's understanding what's the important stuff and what's the single source of truth you should really focus on. I think.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, well, obviously everyone always wants to use data to make their decisions on because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people get confused or overthink it, or sometimes look at too much data, sometimes look at too little data. And hopefully on this episode, we're going to give people a bit of guidance as to potentially a better way to approach it.
Yep.
So what do you think are the common issues with how people approach data and performance marketing? And there's no one size fits all, but what's your take?
I think sometimes it's making sure you're like looking at the right things. So I've seen a lot of dashboards and reporting spreadsheets in the past where it's got every single metric under the sun reporting into it.
Yes.
Like you've got a range from like impressions, reach, click-through rate, clicks, video watches, video views, video completions, all the way down to purchases, return on ad spend, cost per acquisition, leads, whatever it's going to be. There's just sometimes it just feels like there's too much being looked at and no thought going into, well, what are the areas that are actually going to inform me if what we're doing is working?
Yes.
And I think that's the key issue I kind of see sometimes, that there's just too much data for the sake of data.
Yeah, it's almost the idea of, well, if it can be tracked, let's track it.
Exactly.
And if the data's there, then we should probably put it in a report because it's there, without that thought of well, what we're going to actually do with it.
Yeah. If it's just a number you're tracking like month on month in a sheet, and it doesn't, you're not saying, well, this, say for example, impressions, if you've got a goal for driving awareness, etc., great. If you're solely focused on revenue growth and you're plotting that number on a sheet month by month and that's all you're doing, is it even worth it polluting your like visual every month?
Yes.
And being there? Do you actually need to focus on that?
Yeah, polluting is a good word, because I think, again, there's nothing wrong with collecting lots of data. Nothing wrong with it. But if you're collecting more than you need and you're putting it all in one place, quite often, polluting the view is quite a good way of putting it, because then the really important stuff, it's just super easy for that to get missed.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, and then the important stuff gets missed or can't get interpreted because it just looks messy. And what people do see are metrics they don't necessarily need. Yeah. So I think the first piece of advice is like step back and really think about what you need to know. Then what metrics are going to tell you what you need to know.
Exactly.
And start there.
Yeah.
I reckon.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think go back to that polluting point. It's like, I'm the sort of person, if there's too much noise going on in any form of thing I'm doing in life, it's really hard to just focus on what you actually need to do.
Yeah.
And it's the same with data. If there's
that's called OCD, isn't
it? It's called a little bit of OCD, but it's like, say you've got 30 rows, 30 columns in a sheet, with all this data, you've color coordinated it with lots of red and green, depending on if it's up or down. Suddenly you're looking at that and it looks like it's hard to pick out what's really going on. And so it's kind of,
it's like looking through a kaleidoscope.
Exactly. It's like looking through a kaleidoscope. So I think like your point is focusing and asking the right questions and really going, this is what we care about. This is what's going to, like if revenue growth is the main factor, step back, write a list of what are the things we're going to measure success on. Yep. And kind of go from there.
Yeah. And also structure as well. Yeah. So you can have, again, there's nothing wrong with having loads of numbers and colours and all that sort of stuff in there at all. But sometimes it's the structure of the report that matters as well. So, that first view might be really simplified, headline KPIs, open it up, instantly know whether it's going well or if it's not going well. Then you've got the next page or tab or whatever with all the data. So if someone does want to dive into it, it's there and it's readily available. But structure is...
Yeah, I think that's sort of key, because you're going to have different types of people looking into these reports potentially. So is it CEO or marketing director that they just want to see the high level, how things are tracking against what is expected, and that's what they need to then kind of probe questions with their team.
Yes.
Whereas you've got potentially the performance marketer or the doer, who is more likely to want to dive into a lot more detail.
Yeah.
And that's what those other pages are for. So reports need to be structured, like you said, in a way that they talk to different stakeholders in the right way.
Yeah, knowing your audience.
And that comes down to that real first like exec summary slide is kind of like they're probably the metrics that you should focus on, that they're going to really move the needle on what your actual objective is.
Yeah.
I'd say.
Yeah, definitely. Also thinking about what decisions you need to make off the back of it is really key. So, if you think about, your audience, so who's going to be receiving this information, how do they need to see it? But what decisions can you make off the back of it? Is it about your e-com merchandising? Is it about your B2B content assets and what content assets are working better? Is it about what ad platforms are working better? There should always be a view on what decisions need to be made, and therefore what information would be genuinely helpful in making those decisions.
Exactly. And it's kind of like, I always like to think, even though you have these reporting dashboards and they get sent out every week, or you review them weekly, or you pull data into a spreadsheet for your own analysis, you should always be going into it with a question.
Yeah.
You should never be going in here being like, I'm just going to have a look around and see what looks good, what looks bad. Like, what are you going in to look at that data for? What are you using that data for? And like you said, if it's what's our best performing 3 pieces of content where we can provide this to the content strategy team and get a pipeline of new assets briefed in and ready to go. Then you go in, you find that data, you pull it out. It's really useful then. You're blinkered to one thing and you're shutting out all of the noise then. So completely agree with your point on that.
Yeah, just always know what it is you need it for.
Yeah, exactly.
So I quite like a matrix concept or like a model. Yep. So if we take e-commerce as an example, just having like a layer of different metrics across the consumer journey that are going to tell you overall what's the picture like, how's it performing, but also where are the steps and what are the weakest links in those steps. So with e-commerce, for example, at the top you might have click-through rate or CPC, so how are my ads performing. Then the next stage is the landing page, so what's my add to cart rate, i.e. how well is the landing page working. Then some metrics around the checkout, and then the overall average order value, conversion rate and everything else, because then you can go, well, actually, do you know what, my overall ROAS is okay, but how do I make it better? And you go, oh, traffic's a bit expensive, let's dial that, try and get influence that a little bit in a positive way, see what happens. But if you've got that view and you can track that view, you can start to see where you can improve, and also what impact those specific changes have on a week by week basis. But I like that approach personally.
And like it's like you said, that's really effective, because then you can hone in on like, well, what's the area I really need to improve on as a team, whether it's in the short term where you can make quick wins, or it's a larger strategic decision. For example, if we're getting a lot of people to the checkout, the add to cart, but no one's going through to the checkout page, so then you identify the blocker. And the one I always like with it is, everything always seems to come back to ROAS a lot. And if you've got a good volume, sometimes you can have a really good conversion rate, good volume of transactions coming through, but your average order value is so small that trying to move the dial on a significant increase on return on ad spend is actually quite difficult. So then you can see that and you can be like, right, my average order value is £20, for example. If it was £25, what does that do if all these numbers stay the same with my return on ad spend? And you can start modeling it out. And it's really simple then to be like, okay, let's try and increase average order value. Then the question of like, how do we do this comes into it. Is it you bundle products together? Is there a gift with purchase? Do you increase the free shipping threshold? Like all these things you start to consider based off that one piece of data that's been like kind of streamlined and siloed into an area that you need to focus on.
Yeah, absolutely. And but then you're really informed about where to put your energy and time.
Exactly.
And that makes a lot of sense. I think also collecting metrics outside of the platform as well. So price.
Yeah.
Or like trying to find, how does your product stack up against the competition, and metrics like that, or the competitive metrics that you get out of Google Ads and where you sit in the auction and things like that will tell you or might indicate that there are other things going on within the market beyond the ads themselves that might be impacting performance. And I think that sort of thing is really important as well to give you context and information.
Yeah, because you can be sometimes blinkered by your own like metrics in Google Analytics or your Shopify data or in the platforms themselves. But like you said, if a competitor's become really aggressive in the market, say on PPC, they're going after your brand, for example, if they increase their impression share threefold, of course that's going to have an impact on you.
Yes.
But if you don't know it, you could be trying to fix the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And actually what you were doing was perfectly fine.
Yeah.
And you're not prepared to pay any more money on your cost per click.
In the auction,
and to get in the auction than you are prepared to do because it becomes not profitable for you.
Yep.
But if you don't know, if you don't know the whole picture and what's going on, you could use data in the wrong way at that point.
Yeah, definitely. That is a risk as well, isn't it? Making the wrong decisions with the wrong data when you're missing the right data.
Yeah.
What about B2B? Because we always talk probably more about e-commerce than B2B. So if we're talking about a typical customer journey on B2B, where would you start when it comes to trying to work out what data points you might need to help you improve your campaigns? Yeah,
so I think obviously the life cycle on that is a lot longer, and sometimes you can't see all the points directly yourself, especially as an agency.
Yeah.
But I think it's just the feedback loops with teams to get the data you need is vitally important. Like obviously, if you think for us, we use LinkedIn as an example.
Yep.
So we can do the same thing as we do with an e-com brand. So we can look at if it's content driven, for example, or if it's if it's something to do with inquiries into the sales team, we can see what's messaging's resonating, what creative's resonating. Same as we would for an e-commerce business. So stay the same. Is this doing what we think it should be doing? If it's a piece of content, are people engaging with it? What's the cost per acquisition on it? Are they getting to the site? Are they filling the form out?
Yeah.
How long is the form? And if we've seen it before, right? Where there's forms that are as long as a A4 piece of paper.
It's like Fort Knox just to get
into it. You're giving away your bank account, your security number, everything, just to get an ebook. So it's understanding that's a touch point you can understand with your data. Is the content good? But are we just asking for too much for the value of what it is? Yep. So it's understanding that. And then once they get into that sales cycle and the pipeline, if it's a 2-year process or if it's a 12-month process, whatever it is, it's keeping that feedback loop going of like, when do they become a qualified lead? When are they a sales qualified lead? And like just seeing these touch points overall and then working out, okay, well, what content's the main driver of that? What keywords are the main driver of that? And kind of really... I think there's a lot more analysis longer term that you like of longer term data for B2B. You can't make short term snap decisions, so you kind of have to use long term foresight planning and kind of you've got to at least have I think you have to have at least 6 months worth of good data to make the decision. So sometimes it feels like it's a little bit more slower pace to make longer changes, but the process is still.
The process is similar, isn't it? It's about getting that, but the CRM data is so important.
It's so important. And how you collect, and I think with that, it's how you're collecting the data, because really for us there, it's the users, the customers that are coming in, the leads that are going to be the data we're trying to analyze from our platform. So if the UTM parameters are not tagged up correctly, if there's not the right hidden fields on the forms to collect what campaigns, keywords, everything they're coming from. There's all that data from a B2B perspective is really important because that informs the decisions of, it might only be 3 sorts of ad groups in a campaign and set 10 or 12 keywords that are driving that volume of pipeline
Yep.
long term.
Yep.
But if we're not collecting, if that data is not being collected into the CRM and then we're seeing it go through in that pipeline,
then
that data is missing, and then you will never, ever be able to make the right decision.
Yeah, definitely. Although you can, even though B2B definitely is a longer term play when you're looking at return on ad spend or pipeline value. But I do have an example of a quick win though, of kind of how looking at the right data points and making the right decisions off the back of it had a very successful outcome for a B2B client of ours.
Go for it.
So it was to do with a kind of like a white paper download campaign. And we just launched, this was a while back now, and we just launched this new white paper, and it was awful, like just really badly, like really, really badly, like the worst CPA ever.
Yeah.
And then you look at it and go, right, well, clearly the CPA is telling me something because it's way beyond what you'd normally pay. Yeah. What else can I see? And so, the click-through rate's really low. Click-through rate's really low. It's the right audience because this audience has worked before for very similar content. So I kind of know the audience is right, but clearly the click-through rate's telling me they're just not interested in this piece of content.
Yeah.
Pause it. Right. Literally off the back of that, rework the title, just simplified the title in the ad copy, the ad creative, and the landing page.
Yeah.
Didn't change anything to do with the content at all. Just literally dressed it up in a more simplified way. Started it again. Best CPA they'd ever had.
Yeah.
Right? And that's looking at the right data to go, oh, do you know what? I think that's telling me this.
Yeah.
I'm now going to go and do that. See if it improves things. Yes, it did.
Yeah.
So you kind of got to, look at the right data points. Quite often, no one really knows what the actual answer or solution is going to be.
No.
The key is going, I think it's telling me this. Let's try that.
Try it. Yeah.
See if it works. Look at the numbers again. And that's where data really comes into play.
Yeah, definitely.
That's what I think. Anyway.
Yeah, because definitely, because if you change that title, everything, and it still hadn't moved the needle, then is it the topic? And then it's suddenly like this is just something that's not resonating at all with people.
Yeah.
And then it goes back to a wider picture. But it's so interesting that just how you frame something can make a massive difference, and then the data can tell you that.
Yep.
Instantly.
Yep, definitely. Yeah. But you've got to. The biggest mistake I think that people make with data and reporting in general is collecting loads and loads and loads of information because either they feel they have to or they feel they can, and they're not making any decisions off the back of it.
Yeah, it's just there because everyone's got in. Do you know what I find it is sometimes? It's just there. It's always been done.
Yeah.
And then you ask the question of what's this for? And they're like, oh, it's just we've always been doing it. And if no one can tell you, if you ever get that answer, step back and really go, why the hell are we collecting all this information if no one's doing anything with it?
Yeah.
I've had so many conversations with people that just data input every single thing under the sun.
Yes.
And it's just...
Why?
It's just why.
Why?
Then you ask the question of okay, so are you tracking that with trends over time? No, we just put it in because we've always done it. And that's if you got that as an answer for data, you don't need it.
Yep. I think that, definitely 100% agree. And I think it's just a really good habit or discipline to get into every time you go through that process of putting that report together or receiving that report, seeing if you can find one action, dive into it and go, right, well, I think it's telling me this, so let's try that.
Yeah.
And that's a really good discipline to get into because A, you'll be moving things forwards, or at least progressing and pushing stuff. Secondly, or B, can't remember if I said one or two. The second point is that it makes you think about the data you're looking at and can I actually use this? Is it useful? Does anyone else use it? Good discipline.
Yeah, definitely.
I reckon. Good habits. Great. Well, look, massively useful. Have you got any parting thoughts?
Parting thoughts, I guess. I think the big thing is just if everyone could just go away at the end of this and just...
If everyone could just go away
now, away now. Yeah, we're done. It's nearly Easter. No, if everyone could just go away, just take 5-10 minutes to just look at how you're reporting, look at those metrics and be like, what's actually useful for me, and write them down. And if you can streamline your reporting, it'll help you make better decisions. So just go away and review what you're looking at and if it's useful for you.
Step back.
Because if it can save you time and you can put time into the right things, that's a massive win at the end of the day.
Definitely. Well, look, really good. Thank you, Dan.
Cheers, John.
Always good. And thanks to everyone for listening. And we shall see you on the next episode. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed that episode, please do come and subscribe. Join us for future episodes where we talk about the ins and outs of running paid media and driving improved conversions and revenue for your business. See you next time.